Hey everyone, welcome to part 6 in our series documenting our trip to the Baltic Sea in 2018. If you've missed any of the previous episodes, you can watch them by clicking on the links that I've put in the description section below this video box. If you are caught up on the story, then we pick up the action as we pull into St. Petersburg, Russia. We hope you enjoy. It's me and the girl. We're having this nasty habit of getting up at like 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. So today we're going to take advantage of it. Yesterday we went up to have breakfast at about 7:30 and there were 10 billion people. That's not fair. There was probably 30 billion people. So today, since we're up, Dana, we go upstairs. Dana, upstairs is where the food is. We're going to go up there right when they open at 5:30 and maybe, I don't know, maybe we can find somewhere to sit.
Even at this time of the morning, the Garden Cafe was packed, but since we were going to be gone all day, if we wanted to eat anything, we had to do it now.
Oh my God, were we wrong.
We were able to get off the boat at 8:30. This was going to be a cool day because it was the first time that all 20 of us were doing something together. Some folks stopped to take an obligatory picture with a local.
Okay, so now here's where we go through immigration.
Before meeting up with our private tour guide, we had to get through customs. In Russia, you're required to show your passport and a travel visa. Your passport is a document that's your identity when you travel, but a travel visa temporarily authorizes your stay in a foreign country. Not all countries require these. Russia does. After everyone passed through customs, we needed to find our guide. In the next room was a souvenir market and a host of tour guides. Ginny eventually spotted our tour guide, Anna, and she led us outside to our bus.
It's right here. Is everybody here?
We decided before our trip that we were going to use a private tour company for our 2-day stay in St. Petersburg. Since there were 20 of us, we could get our own private bus, our own private tour guide, and we would be able to make a few special requests.
Looks like that's our bus.
The bus was actually fantastic. As we stepped aboard, the new bus smell hit you right in the face. Anna told us that the bus was only a couple of months old, and since there were only 20 of us, only about half of the bus was occupied. People were able to stretch out and have their own seats. I took the entire back row so that I would have access to windows on both sides of the bus and out the back for filming purposes. Before long, we were looking across the Neva River at what is known as the Palace Embankment. This is a stretch of the river that is lined with palace after palace. At 10 o'clock, we pulled up to our first destination, St. Isaac's Cathedral. St. Isaac's is the largest Eastern Orthodox church in St. Petersburg and the 4th largest cathedral by capacity and area in the world. Tsar Alexander I ordered its commission and it took 40 years to build, being completed in 1858. If the dome looks familiar, designers were inspired by it when they built the dome on the United States Capitol building. Under the Soviet government, the church was stripped of all of its religious trappings and turned into a museum. But since the fall of communism, it is once again a place of worship. And a museum. For some reason, we didn't go in. Maybe because it was Sunday and services were going on inside. But whatever the reason, we were back on the bus at 10:25 and off to our next destination. We passed by the Bronze Horseman, an equestrian statue to Peter the Great. Throughout the day, we also passed a tremendous number of young servicemen. I don't know if there was some kind of a special event going on that day, but they were certainly out and about. We left the Palace Embankment and crossed over to the northern side of the Neva River where we saw this beautiful ship. Tour guide Anna asked us if we could guess what it was. It turns out this is the Flying Dutchman restaurant and gym. We crossed over a very narrow bridge onto a small island that houses the Peter and Paul Fortress. And in the middle of the fortress is the Saints Peter and Paul Cathedral with its very tall spire. Now, as you can see, we are walking up to the cathedral with not too many people around. It turns out this is why we didn't spend too long at St. Isaac's Cathedral.
Judy got your sign, did she?
Looks like we got a new tour guide, Dana. Okay, here's Dana's new souvenir. Close up on that. Okay, very pretty.
We stopped for the water closet.
Oh yeah?
She says we're like Alaska.
And they took American dollars. $5.
At the outside, there was like a little booth or something.
But this is more valuable than my iPhone because
At least it has the right time.
it has the right stuff. And I always know that it's not going to be changing on its own.
Yeah, the Wi-Fi over here has not been awesome.
So you never know if your phone's been updated and if we're out on the right time.
Now we know what to check. We're right there. And then when we got here, all of this happened. And here goes a whole other bus.
That's why you get a private guide. Had we arrived 15 minutes later, we would have waited for an hour or so to get inside. It turns out the cathedral opens at 11 o'clock, and we were among the first to go inside.
I can already see this is going to be amazing.
St. Peter and Paul's Cathedral is the burial place of nearly all of Imperial Russia's rulers, including Peter the Great, Catherine the Great, and the last Russian monarch, Nicholas II. There are 41 tombs in all, including some of the children of the emperors.
These are all the children.
In the rear of the cathedral is a small chamber, which is the resting place of the Romanov family. The last Russian emperor, Nicholas II, his wife, their 5 children, and 4 family servants, who were all brutally murdered by Bolshevik members on July 17, 1918. We spent about 25 minutes inside the church and then headed back out to our bus. I told you we saw a lot of servicemen. We crossed back over to the south side of the river and pulled up to the beautiful Church of the Savior on Spilled Blood. And there is another bloody story behind this church. On March 13, 1881, Emperor Alexander II was returning home from a parade and a visit with his cousin when a bomb went off underneath his carriage. Fortunately, he was riding in a bomb-proof carriage at the time and was unharmed. Unfortunately, he decided to leave the carriage to inspect the damage and fell victim to a second bomb that was thrown at his feet. A third bomb had been standing by. 2 years later, a church was begun on the exact spot where the bomb went off. It is actually included inside the church and even contains pieces of the cobblestone street from that day. What's interesting is that, as you can see in this artist's rendering, Dana is standing on about the same spot the artist must have been while he was making his drawing. You can even see the same palace in the background. The inside of the church is spectacular, and as you look around, I'm going to blow your mind. There are no paintings inside this church. All of the artwork that you see is mosaics, 7,500 square meters of them. If you don't know, mosaics are made up of tiny pieces of colored glass, stone, or some other material, all put together like a puzzle to create an image. Another cool thing that our tour guide Anna told us is that if you shine a light on some of the walls, the rocks in them will glow. Inside this overhead orb is a mosaic of Christ as a teenager. We finished inside the church at about noon and headed outside to see the back of the church where they had a small flea market to buy souvenirs.
We are here in St. Petersburg and we are outside the Palace of the Spilled Blood. Very busy day today. It's a Sunday, but there are a lot of tourists because there's a lot of cruise ships in town.
I tried to get Dana to take a touristy picture in the period outfits, but she was a tough sell.
Hey Dana, you want me to take a picture of you in the fun,
No.
the fun dresses and what? Yeah, you could be that guy on the right.
I'll be the one in the middle.
After some took a quick stop in the pay toilet, we headed back to our bus to see where we were off to next. We then drove a few blocks and parked our bus across the street from Kazan Cathedral. We then got out and began walking. Tour guide Anna told us to be on the lookout for brides because so many people come to St. Petersburg to get married. Right past Starbucks, Anna turned and went down a small side stairway. It turns out that we were going to have lunch at a restaurant called Katyusha. The interior was decorated like somebody's grandmother's house in the 60s, but that was okay. I just felt like I was in a dollhouse. As we got settled, Dana told me I had to go check out the bathroom and to take my camera.
So here's the bathroom. Wash basin. And birds piped in. Okay. Please don't throw any toilet paper or personal care products in the toilet. I'll let you figure out what that means.
As I got back to the table, I found out that my drink had arrived. I had ordered a Moscow Mule, having never had one, and it came with straws, something not readily available on board the Breakaway.
Cute little purse.
It is. Well, there's straws in it.
I know, right?
Who's taking those straws back to the boat?
This guy. Okay, this is my first Moscow Mule. That seems to be mint. That's a lime. That's 2 straws, which I'm going to take on the boat as contraband. I don't know.
Tastes like a margarita.
How would you know?
I'm just guessing. I've heard things. I hear things.
Okay, so this is the label here. Turn inside, you see the front. And they have a local word that's drawn out for a label. Why don't you go ahead and read me that title of this beer microphone?
Tong Zong Zing Dup Ba.
I'm sorry, I missed it.
Tong Zong Zing Dup Ba.
It sounds like a Chinese beer. Are you sure you said that? Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, that's very cool.
Awesome. Local beer.
Then the food came. Mike had the lamb shish kebab, and I ordered the stroganoff. I will say that the food was good, but the portions left me a little hungry at the end of the day.
Again?
Okay, so since we got it before, we got a little bit of this. So we got shopping, and we got.
Cash or retail?
Oh, that is awesome. That's great. I love it. And the ballerinas on it. You went through?
That's what he's saying.
Hey, lunch is on the Let's go. Woo. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
And right as we walked out onto the street, Anna's comment about there being brides everywhere rang true. You know how in America we joke that there is a Starbucks on every corner?
That's Starbucks right there.
We crossed the street and walked past the Kazan Cathedral to find our bus waiting for us. In a few minutes, we were pulling up behind the Winter Palace, which was the official home to the Russian monarchs from 1732 to 1917. It and 5 other buildings is now home to the world-famous State Hermitage Museum, the second largest art museum in the world behind the Louvre Museum in Paris. It was established in 1764 by Catherine the Great and has over 3 million items in its collection. The palace itself has 365 rooms. That means you could sleep in a different room every night of the year. Once again, Anna pulled off her magic by knowing exactly what time to come here. We waited in line for about 3 minutes and then walked straight into the museum. As we walked in, we were floored just by the entryway, but as they say, you ain't seen nothing yet. After going up the Jordan staircase, our first stop was the Field Marshal's room. It turns out the center chandelier in this room weighs 3 tons.
This entire room was created to house these 6 paintings.
Now we're entering the red velvet room and by falls off. Holy cow.
Next was the Peter the Great room, also known as the Small Throne Room. This room is dedicated to the memory of Peter the Great and features a portrait of him above the throne. Next door is the Armorial Hall. It was used mainly for grand receptions. The entrances are flanked by sculptures of early Russian warriors. The next room was the Picket Room, which was used to change the internal palace guard. Not much was going on in here today, so Vern and Carla decided to liven things up with an impromptu waltz. The next room contains the Grand Church, which was incredibly beautiful. Curiously, this is where the museum decided to display the shirt worn by a 21-year-old Nicholas II, before he became a czar, on a trip to Japan where he was attacked with a sword and cut on his forehead. It was the blood from this shirt that scientists in recent years used the DNA from to positively identify all of Nicholas's Romanov family members from the brutal assassination that I told you about earlier.
Is the sister who owns the sisters?
As we were exploring this room, Anna's twin sister arrived with her own tour group and the two posed for a picture. Darren so wanted to get behind this painting and stick his head into one of the face holes of the priests. Next, we entered what is known as the War Gallery of 1812. This hallway contains the portrait of 332 war generals who led the Russians to victory over Napoleon. Then we entered the St. George Hall, also known as the Large Throne Room. This room was used for official ceremonies and receptions.
That's Peter's throne. I don't think he ever was here. He was 6'8", so they made him a big throne, but he would have hated this place and never would have come here.
The next room is Pavilion Hall. Anna asked us if we could guess the significance of this golden peacock. Give up? It's actually a clock. Look it up on the internet to see how it works. Along the way, we journeyed through the Italian cabinet and came across Crouching Boy, the museum's only work by Michelangelo. Next, we entered the large Italian Skylight Hall. It is filled with many paintings by Italian artists and features natural light from the overhead skylight. Soon we came to the Rembrandt room dedicated to the Dutch master. This painting, called Danae, was damaged by a sulfuric acid attack in 1985. It took restorers 12 years to save it. In the Alexander I room is an amazing collection of silver. This is the gold drawing room. This room is called the boudoir and has a secret door leading back into the gold drawing room. We spent about an hour and a half inside the museum and covered maybe a third of it. As we made our way outside, we once again patted ourselves on the back for choosing a private tour guide who really knows when to get in to see these places of interest.
Once again, look at all these people waiting to get in here. The line goes way back.
We got back on our bus at about 4:15 and now had a little time before our next appointment. We drove around the city for about 45 minutes before the bus let us off sort of near where we had eaten lunch earlier in the day.
Chocolate Santa, nice!
As we were walking, we passed a wedding procession. this time in their cars.
Wedding party. Apparently it's customary to rev your engine.
Remember the two Starbucks that were across the street from each other? Well, we decided to take a break at the second of the two Starbucks where some people got a coffee or some kind of pastry. After chilling for about a half hour, we crossed the street and saw a local band playing right out on the boulevard. As we walked along, we were passed by a large group of people in the streets peacefully protesting about something. And before long, some riot police had assembled to make sure that things didn't get out of hand.
Okay, so we're here in St. Petersburg. We're getting ready to go on our boat cruise, and they have the riot gear guys out here because they've got some protesters out on the main street, so they are ready.
We eventually made our way to the Palace Square, which is a giant public space home to many concerts and other public events. As you can see, it is in the backyard of the Winter Palace / Hermitage Museum where we had just spent our afternoon. We had no plans here, it was just a cool place to relax while we waited for our evening's canal boat ride. While I was there, I got some shots of the various landmarks, including the General Staff Building topped with a Chariot of Glory statue, the Alexander Column, and I even got a shot of some kids doing some native dances.
And then there's the young kids doing their own version.
We hung out here for about half an hour before heading off to find our canal boat. Before getting on our boat, we said goodbye to Carla and Kelly's mom Nancy as they were heading off to see the ballet in the Hermitage Theater instead of taking the canal ride. The rest of us boarded the canal boat at about 6:45 and took our seats in the back. Blankets were provided and were pretty welcome since it was already pretty cold. We made our way through the canals and out onto the Neva River itself, where we saw many of the sites that we had visited that day. The St. Peter and Paul Cathedral, the Winter Palace, which is now home to the State Hermitage Museum, St. Isaac's Cathedral, This is Jeff and Ben photobombing a young girl taking a picture on our boat.
I'm freezing.
This bridge we keep passing under is the Palace Bridge. We went over it today. Now we've gone under it twice. The Palace Bridge. Makes sense because it's right next to the palace.
As we finally got back to the dock, we found Anna waiting for us. Having already done this canal ride about 10,000 times, she was probably smart and went somewhere warm to have a bowl of soup. As we were standing on the dock, another boat went by rocking out and dancing to Michael Jackson's Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. Unfortunately, I don't have permission to use that song here in this video, so please use your imagination.
All right, so we're done with our river cruise, our canal cruise, and now we're headed back to the bus. And I think now it's kind of the end of our day, and we're gonna head back to the ship, maybe get something to eat, because we're doing this all again tomorrow.
A short bus ride got us back to the port at around 8:30, where we went through the customs station again in order to get back onto the ship. We had a quick dinner at the Garden Cafe, and since Dane and I had gotten up at about 5 a.m. again, we went to bed at around 11 o'clock.
If you'd like to book this trip or anything like it, please call Dapple Destinations at the number on your screen. And if you have any questions, please enter them in the comment section below. And as always, please like and subscribe to our channel by clicking our little picture here on the side. And we'll see you next time.